Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear participants. Welcome to this session of textual study of the Quran. We will continue today with our study of Surah Anam, which is the sixth surah of the Quran. So, this is the first surah of chapter number 2. Remember, the second chapter of the Quran is the culmination of all the chapters of the Quran, and the addressees of the Prophet. They are finally given their charge sheet, and at the same time, they are also told the punishment that they'll be meted out, and this is in the last surah of this chapter, which is Surah Tawbah, the ninth surah, and the fourth surah of the chapter. As a result, we can see that as far as the uh, prophetic mission is concerned, it reaches its culmination. So remember, this is a very important sector of the Quran, section of the Quran that we have to understand, that the established practice of the Almighty regarding His messengers is that their addressees are rewarded or punished in this world. And this reward and punishment is primarily a rehearsal of the reward and punishment that is going to take place in the hereafter. So, in the life of every messenger, a lesser day of judgment ensues. And this reminds people of those times of the greater day of judgment. And because of the fact that these details are enshrined in the Quran, so it becomes abiding reminder for all those who come after the times of the prophets. So remember, this practice of punishment is solely related to the lives of the prophets, because it is the messengers, in fact, amongst them who are given this authority that they explain the religion of God in its ultimate form, so that no excuse is left for the deniers. As far as the content is concerned, it shines bright. It is something which dazzles with the shine and the brightness of the midday sun, and there is no a chance of any people or any person misunderstanding it. And that is why, precisely, when people deny it, the Almighty says that this denial is not because of any confusion or any lack of clarity. It is because of arrogance, and this arrogance is punishable in this world. So this is the theme of the Quran, the subject matter of the Quran, and it reaches its culmination in this chapter, whose first surah we are studying. So we will continue our study of this surah, which primarily addresses the Quraysh and marks them for their misdemeanor, and tells them that the polytheism that they are indulging in is something that they should reconsider, because they have no proof for it. So we will be starting off with certain verses which tell us that as far as eating is concerned, it has to be something that must always begin in such a way that the animal which is slaughtered must have been slaughtered in the right way, and that is that it must be slaughtered in a way that the name of God has been pronounced at the time of slaughter, because this pronouncement actually gives the person who slaughters the permission to take the life of an animal. Without this permission, the life of an animal cannot be taken. Such is its sanctity. So the words are فَكُلُوا مِمَّا ذُكِرَ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ إِن كُنتُم بِآيَاتِهِ مُؤْمِنِينَ وما لكم ألا تأكلوا مما ذكر اسم الله عليه وقد فصل لكم ما حرم عليكم إلا ما اضطررتم إليه وإن كثيرا ليضلون بأهوائهم بغير علم إن ربك هو أعلم بالمعتدين. So you people should not pay heed, and if you believe in his revelations, then without any hesitation eat animals that have been slaughtered by pronouncing the name of God. And why should you not eat from things on which God's name has been pronounced, even though he has detailed out in his book what he has regarded as forbidden to you, with the exception that you are compelled to eat something in reality, most people without any knowledge spread erroneous concepts through their innovations. Your Lord knows full well, your Lord knows full well these who exceed the limits. So when it is said that you people should not pay heed, this is actually a comment on what was said in the earlier verses, and that is the Prophet should not pay heed to the propaganda these people had launched against the reforms initiated by the Prophet himself. So this propaganda was that they would say that he was making lawful things which were unlawful ever since the times of their forefathers like Abraham and Ishmael, to be lawful. And these things that they were saying, the Quran says they are mere conjecture that they are following. The religion of Abraham and Ishmael was the same as the one that has been presented to them today by the Prophet. And after being cleansed from the stains of polytheism and religious innovation, it is being presented before them. So the fact that it is said in kuntum bi ayatihi mu'minin, which means that if you believe in his revelations, this is a very pertinent insertion, and these words are emphatically sounded to them and also have an element of warning. And they actually imply that only God has the right to regard things as lawful or unlawful. This the prerogative of the Almighty. No human being has been given this authority to regard something as lawful or unlawful. Even the prophets of God, they do not have this authority. And if this right is granted to someone else as well, then this will mean that he is being given a share in the rights of God. In other words, if the idolaters regard their own deities or someone else to have this authority to regard something as lawful or unlawful, then what they are doing is they are giving a share uh, in the rights of God. And this is the sole prerogative of the Almighty, but they are granting this right to other people as well. And this precisely is polytheism. So the implication is that the issue does not relate to merely eating one thing or abstaining from it. The issue is that once things which are regarded as unlawful on the basis of polytheistic superstitions are declared lawful by God, then this will imply indirectly that you are acceding to polytheism. So this becomes a matter of belief and disbelief. And when it is said that you are allowed to eat those things except whose names, I mean, and why should you not eat from things on which the name of God has been pronounced, even though he has detailed out in his book what he has regarded as forbidden? So, in other words, this clearly means that the Quran has pinpointedly said what are the things that have been forbidden. And this refers to the details in this regard. And we know that they are presented in this surah and earlier on in Surah Maida as well. So, as far as the concept of slaughter and non-slaughter is concerned, or the way that one should be the animal should be slaughtered, as I said earlier on, this is a very important area, and it relates to one's beliefs, and it actually tells us that the life of an animal is sacred. The life of a human being is, I mean, you just cannot think about it, but the Quran says and the Almighty asserts that even the life of an animal has great sanctity. You cannot kill an animal. The only way or the only grounds on which you can take the life of an animal, and that too for your personal need, is that you slaughter the animal in the name of God, which would actually signify the fact that you are slaughtering it in the name of God through His permission. وَزَرُوا ظَاهِرَ الْإِسْمِ وَبَاطِنَهُ إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْسِبُونَ الْإِسْمَ سَيُجْزَوْنَ بِمَا كَانُوا يَقْتَرِفُونَ. This means that leave aside both the outer and the inner aspect of this sin. Those who commit this sin shall soon be punished for this earning. So remember, as far as the fact is concerned, that this sort of punishment or this sort of sin has to be avoided, then the Quran says that this is because of the fact that as far as polytheism is concerned, it has an inner aspect and it has an outer aspect. So the sin which is being referred to here is not a general one, it is the sin of polytheism. So one aspect of polytheism is to regard someone to be God's associate in his being, attributes, and rights. A second one is its manifestation and forms like idols, divining arrows, and the specific things which the Arabs regarded to be prohibited, like the Bahira, the Saiba, the Wasila, the Ham, which has been detailed out in the Quran. So they are practical forms of polytheistic belief. Obviously, both have a deep relationship with one another. They grow and develop through mutual support. So there is an outer aspect and there is an inner aspect. And precisely for this reason, if a sin is to be totally rooted out, both its essence and its manifestation need to be rooted out. So the outer aspect is the form and the inner aspect is the essence. So without adopting this strategy, this is not possible. If the forms and manifestations of a sin are ignored by thinking that since its essence has been refuted, then such a sin will continue to grow and develop through its forms and manifestations and gradually take firm roots in the society. So this is something that in no way can be tolerated. And then it is said, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا لَمْ يُذْكَرِ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ وَإِنَّهُ لَفِسْقٌ وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ لِيُجَادِلُوكُمْ وَإِنْ أَطَعْتُمُوهُمْ إِنَّكُمْ لَمُشْرِكُونَ. Never eat from those animals, however, which have been slaughtered without pronouncing God's name, and bear in mind that this surely is open defiance. And be on guard that devils are suggesting their agents to fight with you in this matter also, and be cautioned that if you obey them, then undoubtedly you will end up as polytheists. So clearly, as you can see, that this is once again repeated here, that you should not eat anything unless it is slaughtered in the name of God. And then it is said, of course, that this is fisk, innahu la fisk, which means that this surely is open defiance. And this actually shows that an animal which is slaughtered in someone other's name than the name of God is open defiance. It is equally prohibited, and it has to be understood that this is fisk. And why exactly is it called fisk? So, firstly, every act which is begun without taking God's name, and Bismillah Allahu Akbar, which is the takbir which is pronounced at this time, is devoid of His blessings. It is essential to pronounce His names while benefiting from any of His favors, whether they are big or small. So, one thing is that the name of God must be taken at the beginning of every routine. And secondly, as I've just pointed out, it is a requirement for the sanctity of life, for the sanctity of a life of an animal, that the name of God be pronounced at the time of slaughter. Life is sacred, whoever it may belong to. Had God not given us the permission, it would not have been allowed for us to take the life of even an animal. It is only at God's behest that we have this right. Personally, I have said this a number of times, that had I not been given this right in the Quran, and had I not read this permission in the Quran that I can eat the meat of an animal slaughtered in the name of God, and these animals have been created for human beings, probably I and many of us would have been vegetarians, because we would have thought that why should we kill an animal for our own joy and pleasure? So it is essential that we pronounce His name whenever we take the life of an animal. And if His name is not pronounced, or if it is pronounced together with someone else's name, or merely someone else's name is pronounced, this will violate the sanctity of that animal's life as well as that of the Creator's life. Another thing is that this shuts the door to the wide path of polytheism. Those who have studied the history of religions, they know that it is an animal sacrifice, that vows and offerings are always made, and they have a significant impact in the role of worship rituals. So, as a result of this significance, they receive great impotence in polytheistic religions. Nations who become religiously enamored with the deity, they try to win its pleasure through animal offerings and sacrifice. So, you see, in polytheism, vows and offerings in the name of the deity that people worship, that occupies a lot of importance. The challenge of Satan mentioned in the Quran, in which he threatened to lead away mankind, also alludes to this way of misguiding them. So he said that in order to mislead mankind, he will do these and these and these things with them, so that they will do certain religious innovations and they would be dependent on these religious innovations. So in order to close all these doors that lead to polytheism, Islam has forbidden animals to be eaten unless the name of God is pronounced on them at the time of their slaughter. And if this is not done, then not only it is a wrong act in itself for the animal to be consumed, it is also something that, as the Quran has said, it is open defiance. It is something that is called as fisk. And then, as you can see, the Quran also says that وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ لِيُجَادِلُوكُمْ وَإِنْ أَطَعْتُمُوهُمْ إِنَّكُمْ لَمُشْرِكُونَ. And obviously, when it is said that you have to be on guard with these devils, that they might, waylay you in any of these forms, then the purport of the Almighty is that these devils, they have they have all the leverage that they can muster to lead away mankind. But we know that the Almighty on several occasions has said in response to this challenge, that Satan and his accomplices can try as hard as they can, but they will not be able to lead people who attach themselves to God. And so, when it is said that be on guard, that devils are suggesting their agents to fight with you, وَإِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ لَيُوحُونَ إِلَىٰ أَوْلِيَائِهِمْ لِيُجَادِلُوكُمْ. So, what does this mean? It actually means that they are trying to urge people to raise a hue and cry, which they themselves are raising on hearing that some of the things that they regard as unlawful are actually lawful. So they are informing their agents that the people who have brought down this new religion, they regard their forefathers as people who consume unlawful things. For these forefathers would slaughter animals without pronouncing the name of God and then eat the meat. As we shall see ahead in this surah, that the belief of the idolaters is stated that they would not regard it permissible to take God's name on animals. So this is something that they had developed, and they no longer pronounce the name of God at the time of slaughter. And when the Prophet and the Quran insisted, they would say that they are bringing something new in religion. This was never there because their forefathers never took the name of God. So they would say that the Prophet, the Quran, and the followers of the Prophet in the Quran, they are guilty of innovation. They are bringing something new that was never there, and they are being told that this is not true. What the Prophet and the companions in the Quran are insisting is the same religion that was taught to Abraham, who is acknowledged by these people as well as their forefathers. And when it is said, وَإِنْ أَطَعْتُمُوهُمْ إِنَّكُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ, that if you obey them, and be cautioned, if you obey them, then undoubtedly you will also end up as polytheists. So this actually means that once the Prophet strikes a compromise with their superstitions, slowly other manifestations of polytheism will creep into his views and beliefs, and the result would be that he will end up among the polytheists. Obviously, there was no chance that the Prophet would end up as a polytheist. This is a verse that has actually been, although addressed to the Prophet, but it is directed towards his opponents and rivals, and they are being told that if the Prophet would do such a thing, then he would be ending up amongst their own lot. And how could this be possible by the Prophet of God? And if this is not possible, then these idolaters should think what they are actually doing. It has absolutely no basis. أَوَمَنْ كَانَ مَيْتًا فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ كَمَنْ مَثَلَهُ فِي الظُّلُمَاتِ لَيْسَ بِخَارِجٍ مِنْهَا كَذَلِكَ زُيِّنَ لِلْكَافِرِينَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. Pay no heed to them. Can the person who was dead, then we raised him to life and gave him a light with which he is walking among people, be similar to a person who is in layers of darkness from which he can never emerge? The deeds of these disbelievers have been made to seem fair to them in this way. And then وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا فِي كُلِّ قَرْيَةٍ أَكَابِرَ مُجْرِمِيهَا لِيَمْكُرُوا فِيهَا وَمَا يَمْكُرُونَ إِلَّا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. We gave respite in a similar way to the prominent wrongdoers of every settlement, so that they may plot their schemes in it. They only plotted these schemes against themselves, but were not aware of this. So when it is said that وَجَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا يَمْشِي بِهِ فِي النَّاسِ, it actually tells us this. I mean, this is like a parable. This is like a comparison of the believers. In other words, people who are inflicted with the death of disbelief and ignorance, if they are given life of faith by the Almighty and for their guidance, if they are given this book, then how can now they differentiate between truth and falsehood in its light, and tread the path of truth and also guide others to this path? So this is what the Quran has asserted. And when it is said that how can he be similar to someone who is walking in layers of darkness, so this refers to the darkness of conjecture and speculation and of desires and innovations which are mentioned earlier. So the Quran has said that they will never be able to emerge from this. Laysa bi kharijim minha. And this parable has been actually narrated to motivate and encourage Muslims and the believers. So what it implies is that whatever has been given to them should not be regarded by them to be something ordinary. They should, on the contrary, duly value it and communicate its vibrant message to others, and should pay no attention to the foolish talk of people who have been left to wander about in the darkness because of their misdeeds. So it's like a pat on the back. It's like an assurance given to the believers that they must not understand that this is something to ward them off or something to discourage them. On the contrary, they are being held in high esteem. So when it is said, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا فِي كُلِّ قَرْيَةٍ أَكَابِرَ مُجْرِمِيهَا, in the next verse, just before that, what it is stated is that كَذَلِكَ زُيِّنَ لِلْكَافِرِينَ مَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. The deeds of these disbelievers have been made to seem fair to them. In other words, God has made the very darkness of disbelief and ignorance which they adopted for themselves seem fair to them. And this is something we know is a practice of the Almighty, that when people decide themselves for themselves to go astray, then the Almighty gives them the leverage, the freedom, the permission to go astray. He does not stop them so that they can be fully exposed. And this should not be something that they think is going in their favor, because ultimately it's not going to go in their favor. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَا فِي كُلِّ قَرْيَةٍ أَكَابِرَ مُجْرِمِيهَا لِيَمْكُرُوا فِيهَا. So this actually means that we gave respite in a similar way to the prominent wrongdoers of every settlement, so that they may plot their schemes in it. So the word ja'alna, as you can clearly see, has been translated as a given respite. So although this is not the literal word and literal translation of the word, but the context readily suggests, and people who are connoisseurs of the Arabic language will know that ja'alna here is actually something which connotes as amhalna, and giving them this respite. So wama yamkuruna illa bi anfusihim wama yash'urun. So they only plotted these schemes against themselves, but were not aware of this. So this actually means that they were plotting these schemes against the truth, but in reality they were plotting them against themselves. They were not aware that they were doing something against something, but in fact it was turning out to be against their own selves. And we can clearly see that this is something which the Almighty does as a practice as well, that when people, they decide to disobey the call of their conscience, when they ward off their own conscience, then the Almighty makes them go astray. He allows them to play all sorts of mischief. وَإِذَا جَاءَتْهُمْ آيَةٌ قَالُوا لَن نُؤْمِنَ حَتَّى نُؤْتَى مِثْلَ مَا أُوتِيَ رُسُلُ اللَّهِ اللَّهُ أَعْلَمُ حَيْثُ يَجْعَلُ رِسَالَتَهُ سَيُصِيبُ الَّذِينَ أَجْرَمُوا صَغَارٌ عِندَ اللَّهِ وَعَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ بِمَا كَانُوا يَمْكُرُونَ. When a sign came before them, they would say, "We shall never believe in it until we are given what God's messengers have been given. God knows better whom to entrust with his position of messengerhood." Soon these wrongdoers will face a humiliating and a severe torment with God for their intrigues. So again, this is something which the Almighty has said, that they would demand that if prophets of God have been given prophethood, then these people should also be blessed with this position of prophethood. And that is why they think that they are also eligible for prophethood. And why is it Prophet Muhammad is singled out for this position? They claim and they say that why did God not choose from among the leaders of Mecca and Taif people who were prominent, people who were rich? And obviously they gave this statement only as a machination. It was an evil plot and scheme that they would make. And the purpose was to provide a cover to them for their egotism and self-deception, and to fool the people who were following them. These simpletons among them highly regarded worldly means and resources. If they saw someone prominent and resourceful in this world, they thought that he must be great in the sight of God as well. So to them, to be a prominent person would mean that that person has lots of resources. He's a rich person. And that is why they would say that why did not God make or appoint someone who was a rich person? And whatever has happened does not make sense to them. So then the Almighty has said that God knows better whom to entrust with his position of messengerhood. So this answer actually, though is not stern with respect to the words used, yet it is very harsh if the meaning is taken into account. So Allahu yaj'alu Allahu a'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalatahu would mean that God knows better whom to entrust with this position of messengerhood. The implication is that the position of messengerhood is not something which every Tom, Dick and Harry is entitled to. God knows full well who to choose for this. It is not something that he can just give to any person. It's not a crown that he can put on the head of any person who demands it. It is something that can only be given to the best of humankind. And it is also evident from this that the Almighty chooses only those people for this position who stand at the pinnacle of humanity, who have exceptional qualities of head and heart. So that is what makes them eligible for this position. So it is said, فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ أَنْ يَهْدِيَهُ يَشْرَحْ صَدْرَهُ لِلْإِسْلَامِ وَمَنْ يُرِدْ أَنْ يُضِلَّهُ يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ ضَيِّقًا حَرَجًا كأنما يصعد في السماء كذلك يجعل الله الرجس على الذين لا يؤمنون. So they will not receive guidance, because whomsoever God wants to guide according to his law, he opens his heart to Islam. And whomsoever he wants to misguide, he narrows his heart and squeezes it in such a manner as if he is climbing the sky. In such a way, God afflicts with impurity those who do not believe. So you can clearly see that as far as guidance is concerned, and the fact that he is going to guide a certain person, this is based on a certain law, and this law has been explained in the Quran on a number of occasions, that only those people will be guided by God who are true seekers of guidance and who spend their lives trying to find out what true guidance is. And people, on the other hand, who have no value for guidance and who spend their lives in evading this guidance, shall never be guided by God, and he will let them go astray. And when it is said that God is going to inflict impurity upon such people, it actually means that the layers of disbelief and polytheism that cover their hearts and minds have become a hindrance for them to accept the truth. Leaving their cherished things and religious innovations and accepting the clear and straight way of Islam, it becomes hard for them, it becomes difficult for them. This actually means that God has deprived them of the urge to seek guidance. They have earned this for themselves. When they have gone astray, God makes them go astray. فَلَمَّا أَزَاغُوا أَزَاغَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُمْ. The law of the Almighty is that He opens the way to Islam for only those who are pure and who cleanse themselves from such filth and spend their lives as seekers of the truth. And this is an established practice of God of guiding people. He never changes this established practice. And remember, you have to earn the guidance of God by showing your yearning, by showing your quest, and by showing your thirst for the truth. وَهَذَا صِرَاطُ رَبِّكَ مُسْتَقِيمًا قَدْ فَصَّلْنَا الْآيَاتِ لِقَوْمٍ يَذَّكَّرُونَ لَهُمْ دَارُ السَّلَامِ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ وَهُوَ وَلِيُّهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. In reality, this path is the straight path of your Lord. To clarify it, we have explained our revelations to those who pay heed. As reward for their deeds is a house of peace for them with their Lord, and He is their guardian. So this house of peace that we can clearly see, earlier it was stated that soon these wrongdoers will face a certain punishment. Now this sentence is exactly in parallel to it. It's like a very common feature of the Quran, that whenever the fate of the wrongdoers is depicted, right after it, the fate of the righteous is also presented. So in other words, contrary to the fate of the wrongdoers, the fate of the obedient will be that God will be their companion and they will live forever in the house of peace and comfort, actually, of course, referring to paradise. So, lahum darus salami inda rabbihim, that this is the house of paradise, this is the place of peace and comfort, that they are going to live forever. وَيَوْمَ يَحْشُرُهُمْ جَمِيعًا يَا مَعْشَرَ الْجِنِّ قَدِ اسْتَكْثَرْتُم مِّنَ الْإِنسِ وَقَالَ أَوْلِيَاؤُهُم مِّنَ الْإِنسِ رَبَّنَا اسْتَمْتَعَ بَعْضُنَا بِبَعْضٍ وَبَلَغْنَا أَجَلَنَا الَّذِي أَجَّلْتَ لَنَا قَالَ النَّارُ مَثْوَاكُمْ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا إِلَّا مَا شَاءَ اللَّهُ إِنَّ رَبَّكَ حَكِيمٌ عَلِيمٌ. Bear in mind the day when He will gather all these wrongdoers. He will then say, O group of jinn, O group of jinn, you have led away many from mankind. And their companions from mankind will immediately say, Lord, we have thoroughly benefited from one another, and today we have reached the time you had prescribed for us. God will say, now fire is your abode. You shall abide in it forever, except what God wills. In reality, your Lord is all-knowing and all-wise. So, as you can see, that the very beginning of this verse, when it says that bear in mind the day when He will gather all these people. So, it, in other words, means that whether they are from jinn kind or humankind, the Almighty will gather all of them. And they must not think that in any way they will be let to go scot-free. And when we said, Ya Mashar al Jinn, that, oh group of jinn, you have led many away from mankind. Now this is a statement in reference to at least Satan, that is mentioned also at other places in the Quran. So remember, he had claimed that very few people from the progeny of Adam would remain secure from his onslaughts, and the Almighty will find most of them to be ungrateful. So it is being told that you have done enough. You have done enough to lure away mankind. And وَقَالَ أَوْلِيَاؤُهُ مِنَ الْإِنسِ رَبَّنَا اسْتَمْتَعَ بَعْضُنَا بِبَعْضٍ وَبَلَغْنَا أَجَلًا الَّذِي أَجَّلْتَ لَنَا. So what would that mean? That their companions from mankind will immediately say, Lord, we have thoroughly benefited from one another, and today we have reached the time you had prescribed for us. And God will say, now fire is your abode. You shall abide in it forever, except what God wills. So again, the answer of the Almighty is very clear, that the companions from mankind will immediately say that, Lord, we have thoroughly benefited from one another. If they tried to fool us, and yes, we got fooled with them from them, and we have reached our fate. And this is something that is absolutely a writing on the wall. And the deities enjoyed this worship, vows, and sacrifices offered them by their followers. So it is something that they would do mutually. And on the other hand, the sorcerers, wizards, they would engage these followers, and they will use them for their own purpose. And in this way, jinn kind and mankind, they benefited from one another. They were like mutual companions, and they had all the benefits. But as the Quran says, that today we have reached the same time. I mean, these people would say that today we have reached the time you had prescribed for us, which means that it is evident that now the statement of the devils amongst mankind has been cut short. It has been interjected. And an aspect of eloquence of the discourse needs to be kept in mind. Ustaz Ghamidi and Ustaz Amin and Islahi, they have pointed this aspect from this verse, that the statement of the devils among mankind will be a confession and an expression of shame. And through this prelude, they will seek God's forgiveness. But it is clearly evident from the style of the discourse that God will interject even before the statement is complete. As you can see, قَالَ النَّارُ مَسْوَاكُمْ. Before even they could finish their sentence, the verdict of the Almighty is that hell is going to be your abode, and خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا, you will remain in it forever, except if God wills, which means, of course, for those people who deserve any remission, any concession, they might be given this concession. And as it's said, Inna Rabbaka Hakimun Alim, in reality, your Lord is all knowing. This exception actually needs our attention. Now, the implication is that once these wrongdoers are consigned to hell, all matters are subject to God's will, and His will is governed by His knowledge and wisdom. In accordance with His knowledge and wisdom, He can reduce their punishment and can also burn them to ashes and bury them in hell. All this depends on His will. No one should have hope except from God. And no one's efforts, recommendations, say, or pleading will be of any benefit. The limits of authority will end with God. The time for repentance and reform, shame and embarrassment will expire. The only thing that shall be left will be God's will, and He knows the secrets of His will. He is able to accomplish, come what may, whatever He intends. So remember, if God is going to forgive people, yes, that is a possibility, but this forgiveness is not something that a person should bank upon, because that again is something which will be governed by God's wisdom and His will. So, وَكَذَلِكَ نُوَلِّي بَعْضَ الظَّالِمِينَ بَعْضًا بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. And then it is said that we let wrongdoers get hold of each other in this way because of their misdeeds. Now, again, this is a very prominent feature of God's practice and His the way He deals with humankind, that He lets people get hold of themselves if they are going to connive and conspire amongst themselves to lead other people astray. Then yes, this is a form of trial from Him. People do enter into this connivance and they try to make life miserable for other people, but then it is this challenge that we have to stand up to. The forces of evil often unite against believers, against the forces of righteousness. And it is here that we have to understand that this war that has been declared by Satan at the very start of humankind is a war that is still going on, is a war that still stares us in the eye, is a challenge that we have to rise up and also try to defeat. But the only way out is to have a strong attachment with God. If you have to defeat the purpose and intent of Satan, it cannot be, and as the Quran says, وَمَا صَبْرُكَ إِلَّا بِاللَّهِ, this perseverance and this steadfastness that you can attain in order to defeat Satan, it can not be obtained illa billah, except with the contention that you have a strong relationship with the Almighty. And that strength of relationship is something, viewers, that we have to develop by coming close to Him, by reading His scripture, by helping out His creatures, by understanding how gracious and merciful He has been to us, and except, of course, we have to also acknowledge the blessings that He has bestowed on us in abundance. The sun, the moon, the stars, the wind, the seas, all of them, they have been created for mankind. And then not only this, our own physical body, the eyes, the ears, the intellect, I mean, there are systems in our body which function in such a magnificent way, in such an impeccable way, that we simply cannot imagine. It cannot be done in a human way. Someone else is behind this. And it is here that we have to understand that God, who we can recognize through our intuition, His attributes have been detailed out in scriptures, in particular the Quran, so that we can really connect with Him. So now we end this session today with these verses. Inshallah, we'll continue with the study in our next session. And now, if you have any questions, you may raise them.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saleem. Assalamualaikum, everyone. Please, some house rules first. Make sure that your questions are pertaining to the passage that Dr. Saleem just translated for us and explained to us. And after that, if we have time, we'll open our forum for open questions. Dr. Saleem, I have a question in the chat that asks, do direct addressees of the Rasul meet their fate during the life of the Rasul, or do they meet their fate even after the demise of the messenger in case they revert back to the message?
So the Quran has taken up this question 3 or 4 times, and it is said that either they'll be punished in the life of the messenger, or they will be done so after he passes away. So one thing or the other has got to happen. It's not that something has been definitely said. At times, this punishment will be completed right before the eyes of the messenger, and at times it will be done after him, as is the case with Prophet Muhammad. For example, in his case, a very large part of the punishment, of course, we know that at the very end, his own nation professed faith. So a very large part of the fate of his nation, it was before his eyes. But as far as the other countries are concerned, to which he wrote letters and about whom the fate was left still in the balance, was something that he could not have witnessed, because he passed away before that actually happened, and the Sahaba were entrusted with that job. So, as I said, this is, it could go both ways. But the thing that we have to understand is that even if it takes place after the demise of a messenger, it takes place because of the work that he has already done in his own lifetime. It is not something that other people are left to accomplish. The other people, or the rest of the people, or the Sahaba, or the companions of a prophet, they just finish off what a prophet of God has started.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saleem. Ammar Rasool, please ask your question. I see that you're not being able to raise your hand.
Ji, Assalamu alaikum. I want to know if I can be heard.
Yes, you can be heard. Go on.
All right, thank you. Dr. Saab, I wanted to ask a question which is similar to the first one, but it is slightly different. I wanted to ask, is there any other major prophet whose nation was punished according to the law of Itmam-e-Hujjah by his own hand? Most of the examples that come to mind are by natural calamities, or in case of Hazrat Isa's case, it was by the Romans that the punishment happened. But in case of major prophets, or even a minor one, is there an example where we find that
we don't have any specific example? It is the prophet's example is the most pertinent. But yes, in the case of Moses also, we know that some of the punishments that were given, although they were given at the behest of God, but they happened through the staff of Moses.
Okay, sir. So my question is, why is that God specifically created this situation for Hazur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? Because then he gets this reputation of being the only warrior prophet, so to speak, that the people who did not believe in him were punished by the sword, and this gives Islam a warrior-like or a war-like kind of a reputation, that either you will meet the sword or you will profess faith, and these are the only choices that you have.
Well, this is a question that ultimately you need to ask God Himself when you meet Him, inshallah. But as I said, this is something that we are at the receiving end, and we need to understand that He could have done this earlier on with previous prophets also, but He chose not to do it. and surely there must be some wisdom. And as far as I can gauge that wisdom, it is that in the earlier regarding the earlier prophets of God, very few prophets of God were effective in the sense that they could win over enough companions with which they could migrate to a place where they could actually establish their political authority. So if you start off with Prophet Noah and the nations of Ad and Samud to whom Saleh and Hud were sent, and then of course Shoaib and lots of other prophets, you'll find that very few of them were able to actually infiltrate in the quagmire of polytheism in which these nations have been stuck. So the extent of polytheism that had gone into them was so deeply rooted that even prophets of God could not find any inroads in them. And it seemed that over a period of time, after Jesus had passed away and 500 years had passed over him, and it was Prophet Muhammad who arrived on the scene, it seems that if you look at the historical part, you'll see that a very large part of his nation actually professed faith in him. It's like a flip of the coin. And earlier nations, you'll find a very large part of them actually denying their prophet. Here you will see that almost you can name a couple of people, two or three of them have been named in our historical sources that they were the ones who were not forgiven. Otherwise, all the nation, everyone, the Quran says, يَدْخُلُونَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ أَفْوَاجًا, that people accepted faith in multitudes. Hardly any blood was shed, except for 3 or 4 people. It was only later on, when the Prophet had passed away, that when the mission was extended beyond the Arabian Peninsula, that this thing resulted more. Yes, there were instances in the life of the Prophet as well. For example, in Khaybar also the punishment was given by the hands of the Sahaba, but it did not actually overshadow the forgiveness that was given to the nation of the Prophet right at the end. And you must not forget the words La tasriba alaykum al-yawm antum at-tulaqa, that you are free now to go and there is no blame on you now. These are the same words which Prophet Joseph used for his own brothers who had betrayed him. So the Prophet had this honor that almost all of his nation professed faith, and it was only when he had passed away that when the Sahaba were left to deal with the rest of the Byzantine Empire and the Sassanid Empire, which is the Persian Empire, that this happened. Otherwise, if you look at the other side, you can clearly see that, contrary to the previous prophets of God, he is the only prophet in whose own life, almost every person who belonged to his nation professed faith.
So that's a very powerful answer. Very quickly, if I can ask you, is this Quranic point of view or Allah's point of view that you have two choices basically, does this not go against the Quranic injunction of that there is no compulsion in religion? Like at one end, the Quran is saying that you are free to choose your religion, there is no compulsion in this, and on the other end, the Quran is saying, you have two choices only, either
You
death
see,
or
we have to understand the context of this freedom of choice. This freedom of choice does not relate to the fate. It relates to the fact that whatever you choose is on your own hands. I mean, the punishment is something that is, you're not being forced to accept something. You're not being forced to accept or reject something. That is something of your choice. But whatever your choice is, it's going to have consequences. So when it is said, like Rafiddin Katabayina Rushdu min al-Ghayy, it actually means that God is not going to force down the guidance that He has sent with His messengers down your throat. It is your own choice. If you wish to end up in disbelief, okay, it's okay with you. I'm not going to force you. But remember, this belief is going to have consequences, and those consequences are ones regarding which you yourself will confess, as we know from the Quran, that yes, I deserve this.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I have another chat question. Is Iblis jinn? Is Iblis
Yes,
jinn or devil? Because in
yes,
Quran,
he's the
some
jinn
places
and
it
he's the
says
devil as
jinn.
well.
Okay,
You
so
see, his name is Iblis, and Iblis has been named variously in the Old Testament. He's been called, and the New Testament, he's been called Mephistopheles. He's been called Beelzebub. So these are all his ancient names. And in the Quran, he's been called Iblis, and Iblis is the same as Satan. And the Quran has specified Kana min al jinn, that he belonged to the genre of jinn. So he was from among the species of jinn.
okay, so the question continues and says, because in the Quran, some places it says jinn, some places it says devil, angel who transgressed. So is
Wherever
that
it says
correct?
devil, I mean, wherever it says devil, the word is shayateen or shaitan. Everywhere the same word has been used. So I think the person who is asking this question should just look up the original Arabic. The same
Okay.
word. It's just a question of translation. At times it is Satan, and at times it becomes a devil. So the devil and Satan are the same person.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Saleem. Shabnam, please ask your question.
Okay, thank you, Wisma. सर आयत नंबर 120 में अल्लाह ताला ने कह रहे हैं कि छोड़ दो गुनाह का जाहिर भी और बातिन भी और उसका एसेंस
Right.
भी. सर वो सर्टेन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में ये आयत आई हैं जहाँ पे एनिमल सेक्रीफाइस का जिक्र हो रहा है. तो सर इसमें मुझे थोड़ा समझ नहीं आया कि ये इसमें इसका जाहिर क्या है, एसेंस और जाहिर सेम ही है ना, कि आप कैसे मतलब हम ये कह सकते हैं कि हमने एसेंस छोड़ दिया और जाहिर ना छोड़ें, क्योंकि आपने भी थोड़ा सा
No, so you
मेंशन
see,
किया.
this is specifically related to the sin of polytheism, in which
Right.
the outer form would be that they would slaughter certain animals by not taking the name of God or by taking the name of some other deity. So this was the outer form in which they would either pronounce the name of God or, I mean, pronounce the name of someone other than God or not pronounce anything at all. So because of
और
the fact
एसेंस
this is and the essence is that in your own heart, if you regard someone to be a deity and you don't express it, I mean something that emanates from your own heart, you see, you have to, I mean, you see, when you express your own words or your own practice regarding a certain being, that is the outer aspect. The inner aspect is that you regard that being to be a partner of God. He is an associate of God.
ऐसा वो मुझे शायद कंफ्यूजन होगी. आपने कहा कि आप एसेंस अगर आप समझे कि खत्म हो गया है लेकिन आप फिर उसका जाहिर जो है वो ना छोड़े, वो मैं कंफ्यूज हो गई थी कि वो फिर
No,
कैसे
no,
है.
it actually means that
जी
the form and
जी
the essence both matter. And if you
right.
stick to the form and sacrifice the essence, it's going to be the same. So it should not be the fact that you only think something out of the fact that if the practice is not in line with the ideology, then perhaps the ideology does not exist. This never
Right.
happens. The ideology always exists. A person tends to lose sight of it.
Right, sir. Right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. Naushad Shafkat Saab, please ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum. Dr. Saab, I wanted to ask when the term animal is used, it's in the generic sense. Now, these verses specifically refer to those animals which are halal, which are tayyib. But what about those living beings like ants, cockroaches, rats, birds of prey that some people hunt? How can we reconcile taking their life without taking God's name?
So remember, this is being said in the context of consuming their flesh for the purpose of eating. We don't
Right,
eat
sir.
ants or rats or such animals normally. So that is why they don't come into a discussion. So this is, if you look at some of the verses, one of them says, "Allah ta'imin yat'umuhu." These are things that relate to things which are edible, which a person eats. So normally, what we eat is discussed here.
Okay, Dr. Saleem, can I ask a question on the same
Right.
line? What
Of
about
course, of
seafood,
course.
Dr. Saleem? We know animals like dolphins are, very sharp, and they're very aware.
Hmm.
So what about we consume seafood? What about their?
It's exactly on the same principle that all animals, I mean, look at this principle regarding land animals. The prohibition of land animals relate to all those animals who are carnivorous and they pounce upon their prey either with their claws or with their paws, with their claws, of course, or with their teeth, which are carnassial, which through which they just get hold of their prey. So, like a lion, maybe, or a vulture. So these are savage animals who eat the meat of their prey, and they eat it in a manner that they tear apart their prey. So, in other words, every sea animal who has the same property, who has the same trait that it tears apart its prey to eat its meat, like the shark, for example. In the West, we have the shark as a delicacy, but clearly you can see on the basis of Islamic principles, on the basis of the principles that have been put forth by the Quran, it has the label of prohibition because it is a carnivorous animal and it also tears apart its prey. So everything which is carnivorous and tears apart its prey either through its teeth or the claws, as is the case with certain birds. So whether these are animals of the sky, of the atmosphere, or of the sea, they'll bear the same principle of prohibition. The analogy will be drawn from the land animals.
So basically, the seafood that what about mercy to those? Is there no specification for that? Like when we eat seafood, leaving shark aside, of course, because that's very carnivorous, but dolphins and octopus and crabs,
I mean,
they don't
so all
particularly
these
harm.
things, we just need to apply the same principle. There could be certain gray areas, and it is better to abstain wherever there is a gray area. And
Okay.
so, I mean, the Quran, you see, you have to understand that the Quran gives us principle guidance and asks us to implement our intellect in applying it to certain things. So it has given us this principle guidance, and we need to apply it to various forms of seafood. There could be a difference of opinion also in some of them, and that is, always understandable. So that is how the Sharia works. It gives us the principle and it asks us to apply that principle. And even if it's a wrong application, as long as it's not done for convenience sake or because of some other personal interest, even if a person makes an error, the style of the Quran is that the Almighty would always forgive such a person, because he was not lenient to himself or herself, or he was not doing it out of any personal interest. It was an ijtihad, it was an application which could have been correct or which could have been incorrect.
Okay. Osama, please ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. My question is, in the West, we have sometime a restaurant who's frying non-halal meat, and they fry the fish in the same oil. So there's a debate going on in the community, Muslim community, that whether the fish is halal or not. So what's your take on it?
Again, I think this is a debate that it should be settled on a personal preference basis. We should not be very finicky about it. It all depends on the nature of the oil. If you think that the restaurant people, I know, I've been to such places. They normally tell us that when the nature of the utensil is such that there could be pieces still floating from the previous fry, and they could get mixed up with the next fry, which is of course the fish, then they themselves normally tell this to us. But in such cases, if you feel that sufficient assurance has been given by the restaurant staff that this does not happen, I think there's no harm, because it's very difficult to go inside the kitchen and find this out. I think all that we need to do is be in a reasonable form of inquiry, and if that inquiry is something in which the front staff tells us that, well, they are kept separate and enough precaution is undertaken, I think we should take their word for it.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, Dr. Saleem, I have another question. What about prawns? Are they considered scavengers?
Well, I would not give any verdict. I would just ask you to look at what the principle is. You see, there are so many forms of prawns, there are so many forms of lobsters and crabs. I would not go into details. All I would like you to do is apply this, that the animal itself should not pounce upon, should not tear apart its prey and eat the meat of that prey. You just apply this, look up that particular prawn that you're trying to eat or being served, and see what its habitat is and what are the habits that it has.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. So all the questions pertaining to seafood in the chat, kindly look up the rule that Dr. Saleem is referring to for clarity. Amar has another question regarding the passage. Amar, please go ahead.
It's possible that it might not be, but I feel that it is.
Then if it's not, then Amar, can you wait until
yes, for sure. Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
thank you so much. I appreciate that. I have another question. I see a raised hand, but I don't know who that person is. Just okay, it says iPhone, so I do not know your name. If you want to ask your question, go ahead.
So, if the concept is that it should not be animals or carnivores that tear something apart, then obviously if you eat that can affect your bodily functions over a period of time. What difference does it make if the oil is mixed or not? Because that way you're not really, things like that. If the same oil is used or the same pan is used, what difference does that make? Because you're not being affected by it, right?
Yes, actually, what actually bothers people is that at times when you fry something like pork in a frying pan, there could be that some parts or some portions of that fried piece might still float in the oil, and when you bring something new like a fish loaf or something like that, it might just get stuck into that and get fried with it, and you might end up consuming it. So this is a point of concern which many Muslims have.
Thank you for that, Dr. Saleem. I do not have any more questions pertaining to the passage, so if you want to move to the idiomatic translation.
Okay, so now we start off with the literal and idiomatic translation, starting off with verse 118. So the words are, فَكُلُوا مِمَّا ذُكِرَ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ. Fa, therefore, kulu, eat, mimma, from among, zokira, mentioned, ismullah, the name of God, alayhi, upon it. So literally it would mean that eat from that which has, upon which the name of God has been taken. In kuntum, in if, kuntum you, bi ayatihi, regarding his verses, mu'mineen, believers. So if you are believers of God's verses, then you must eat after the name of God has been taken on an animal. Wa and ma, not lakum, or wa, ma, and ma is actually what? Lakum, to you. Allah, that not. Ta'kulu, you eat. So why is it that you not eat? Mimma, from among. Zokiras mullahi, on which the name of God has been taken. Alayhi, upon it. Wa and kad, indeed. Fassalalakum, has been detailed upon you. Fassalalakum would mean something that has been given in tafsil or given in detail to you. Ma, that. Harrama alaykum, what he has prohibited upon you. Illa, except. Ma, that. Uzturirtum ilayhi, to which you are compelled, which means that you have no choice but to eat it. Wa, and. Inna, indeed. Kathiran, a lot of people, of course, it is implied, لَيُضِلُّونَ, they lead astray, بِأَهْوَائِهِمْ, with their wishes or with their desires, بِغَيْرِ عِلْم, without any knowledge. So this is how you can see it has been literally put forth. Otherwise, idiomatically, clearly you can see that وَمَا لَكُمْ أَلَّا تَأْكُلُوا would mean that why should you not eat from things on which God's name has been pronounced? So in other words, earlier it was said that you should not eat from things on which God's name has not been pronounced. And then it is said, why should you not eat from things on which God's name has been pronounced, even though he has detailed out their list in the book? Except, of course, illa mazturirtum ilay, that you are pushed into something, you are forced to do something, you're compelled to do something. And then, of course, it says, Inna, indeed, Rabbaka, your Lord, huwa, he, a'lamu, knowledgeable, bil mu'tadeen, regarding people who are transgressors. So indeed, your Lord is one who knows those who are transgressors. Wa, and zaru, leave. Zahir al ism, what is the outer aspect of sin? Wa, and batinahu, its inner aspect. So leave the outer and the inner aspect of sin. Inna, indeed, allazina, those who yaksibuna, earn, al-ism, sin. Sayujzauna, soon they shall be punished. Bima, with that, kanu, they would, yaktarifun, earn. So those who commit a sin, and allazina yaksibun al-ism, those who earn, literally it would mean those who earn a sin, or idiomatically it would mean those who commit a sin. Sayujzauna bima kanu yaktarifun, they shall be punished for what they have earned. Iktarafa would mean that what they have been earning. Wa, and la, no. Takulu, you eat, and do not eat. Mimma, from among that. Lam, not. Yuzkarismullahi alay, upon which the name of God has been taken. So do not eat from what the name of God has not been taken. So lam is a particle of negation. So do not eat from the meat from which the name of God has not, lam yuskir, it's not been taken. Wa, and innahu, it is, la fisk, an act of disobedience or defiance, because this is an act of defiance or disobedience. Wa, and inna, indeed, ash-shayateen, the devils, la yuhuna, they inspire, ila, towards, awliyaihim, their companions, liyujadilukum, that you fight with them. So in other words, that these devils, they inspire their associates to fight with you, liyujadilukum, to fight with you, wa, and, in, if, ata'tumuhum, if you obey them, innakum, then indeed you, la mushrikun, will be from the idolaters. So if you obey them, you will become from the idolaters. Avaman, so avaman, can, man, he who, kana, is, maitan, dead, فَأَحْيَيْنَاهُ, then we make him live, wa, and, جَعَلْنَا لَهُ نُورًا, and give him a light, nuran, light, yamshi bihi, through which he walks, yamshi, walks, bihi, through which, finnas, amongst people. So the first part would be, can the person who was dead, avaman kana maitan, can the person who was dead, and then we gave him life and gave him a light through which he could walk amongst people. Kaman can be like, mathaluhu, in example, in similarity, fi, in, az-zulumat, in darkness, laysa, not, bikharijin, coming out, minha, from it. So can he be similar to a person? Can he be similar to a person? Kaman, mathaluhu, fi zulumat, who is in darkness, and laysa bi kharijin minha, he cannot come out from it. Laysa, not, kharijin, come out, minha, from it. Kazalika, in this way, zuyyina, make fair, lil kafirina, for the disbelievers, ma, that, kanu, they, ya'malun, do. So in this way, disbelievers, what they do has been made fair to them. Zuyyina is the same verb as zayyana or zinat, as you know, in the Arabic and the Urdu language. Zinat means something that becomes a means of beautification or a means of embellishment. So kazalika zuyyina would mean, in this way the Almighty makes, in this way these believers, their deeds are made to seem fair to them. So their evil deeds look good to them. وَكَذَلِكَ, and kazalika, in this way, جَعَلْنَا, we give, fi, in, kulle, every, qaryatin, city, akabira mujrimiha, their prominent wrongdoers, their wrongdoers who are their chiefs, liyamkuru fiha, liyamkuru, so that they can do makar. Makar again is something that you know from the Arabic and Urdu language. It is to plot a scheme. Liyamkuru fiha, so that they can plot schemes in that city. Wa, and, ma, not, yamkuruna, they plot schemes, illa, except, bi anfusihim, with themselves. Wa, and, ma, not, yash'urun, they have any sha'ur of it, they have any awareness of it. So wama yamkuruna illa bi anfusihim would mean that they do not plot their schemes except with their own selves. So seemingly they plot their schemes against other people, but the fact is that they do it against their own selves. Wama yash'urun, but they don't have any sha'ur of it, they don't have any awareness of it. Wa, and, iza, when, ja'athum, comes to them, ayatun, a sign, when a sign comes to them, qalu, they say, lan, certainly not, nu'mina, we will believe, hatta, until, nu'ta, we are given, misla, the same thing, ma utiya, that was given, Rasulullah, to the Rasul of God, to the messengers of God. So when a sign comes to them, what do they say? They say that we shall not believe in it until we are given the same thing as was given to the prophets of God, referring to the prophethood, referring to the fact that if they were granted prophethood, we will not believe until we are also given prophethood. Allah a'lamu haysu yaj'alu risalatahu. Allah, God, a'lamu, is knowledgeable, knows, haysu, where, yaj'alu, he places, risalatahu, his messengers, or his own message. So the thing is that God knows where to put his message. This is what it literally means, and idiomatically it would mean God knows very well that who is worthy of being given messengerhood. He does not give it to any Tom, Dick, or Harry. A person who actually deserves it is the one to whom God gives it. Sa, as we all know, is a particle that actually describes the fact that something is going to occur very soon. Sa yusibu would mean very soon it will happen. Allazina, to those, ajramu, who are wrongdoers, Sagharun, that they will be humiliated. In the law, before God. So very soon the wrongdoers will be humiliated before God. Wa, and azabun shadid, and there will be a very grave penalty for them. Bima, because kanu, they, yamkurun, they plotted. So because of their connivances and plotting, they will have a great or a stern punishment for them. Fa, therefore, man, he who, yurid, intends, Allah, God. فَمَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهُ, and that would mean for he whom God intends. فَمَنْ, he who, يُرِدِ اللَّهُ, God intends. An, that, يَهْدِيَهُ, he gives guidance to him. Yashrah, he satisfies. Sadrahu, his heart. Lil Islam, towards Islam. So literally it means for he who God intends, he guides in the form of satisfaction of heart for Islam. But idiomatically, it would mean that the person who God wants to guide, he makes his heart satisfied on Islam. وَمَنْ يُرِدْ, and for he who wants, أَنْ يُذِلَّهُ, to misguide, يَجْعَلْ صَدْرَهُ زَيِّكًا, Yaj'al makes sadrahu, his heart. The word sadr actually means your chest, but whenever the Quran speaks of the chest, it actually refers to the heart. So, وَمَنْ yurid, and for and whomsoever, and whoever he wants to, أَنْ يُضِلَّهُ, to lead astray. Yaj'al, he makes sadrahu, his heart, zayyikan. So zayyikan means that he tightens the heart, which other words mean that the heart becomes dissatisfied. It gets tightened. Harajan. So harajan means that it is as if it gets squeezed and it gets lumped in one place. Sadrahu zayyakan harajan, which means that the heart gets tightened and it gets gripped. And what is the example of this? It is as if ka'annama, as if. Yassa'adu. Yassa'adu means climbs, as if he climbs. Fis sama, the heavens. So just as it becomes very difficult for a person to climb the heavens, in a similar way, a person who God wants to lead astray, what does he do? Yaj'al sadrahu zayyakan harajan. He makes his heart tighten and he makes his heart as if it is squeezed in one place. In other words, his heart does not receive any satisfaction. Kazalika, in this way, yaj'alullahu, Allah makes a rizq, filth, alallazina, upon those, la, not, yu'minun, profess faith. So in this way, God actually strikes his filth upon those who do not believe. So that is the literal meaning. Otherwise, idiomatically, it would be that God actually afflicts his impurity, rizq, impurity, on those, alallazina, on those, la yu'minun, who do not believe. Wa, and haza, this, siratu rabbika, the path of your Lord, mustaqima, straight. So this is the path, this is the straight path of your Lord. Qad, indeed, fassalna, we have detailed out, al ayat, our revelations, liqawmin, for a nation, yazakkarun, who want to be reminded. So we have detailed out our signs for a nation who wants to be reminded. Lahum, la, for whom, them, for them, Darus Salam, the house of peace. For them is a house of peace. In the Rabbihim, with their Lord. In the, with Rabbihim, their Lord. Wa, and Huwa, he. Waliyuhum, he is their wali. He is their friend. Bima kanu, because they ya'malun, what they did. So he is their friend. He is their wali because of what they did. وَيَوْمَ يَحْشُرُهُمْ جَمِيعًا, wa, and Yauma, the day, Yahshuruhum, he will gather them, Jamia, all. So remember the day when he will gather all of them. And then, of course, what will he say? He will say, Ya Ma'shar al Jinn, Ya, O, Ma'shar, group, al Jinn, of Jinn. Qad istaksartum min al ins, Qad, indeed, istaksartum, you have led away many, min al ins, from humankind. So the Almighty will say to the jinn that, O jinn, or O jinn kind, you have led astray many from amongst humankind. Wa and qala say awliya'uhum their associates minal ins from among the humankind. So their friends or compatriots from among humankinds, they will say, what will they say? Rabbana, O our Lord, istamta'a ba'duna ba'dan. Istamta'a would mean that we benefited. Ba'duna, some of us, bibad with others. So, O Lord, some of us benefited from others in some way or the other. Wa and balagna, we reached. Ajalana, we reached our death or our period. Allazi, that was ajaltalana, that you had fixed for us. We have benefited from one another, and now we have reached the death that you had prescribed for us. Qal, he would say, Annar, hell, maswakum, your abode. Maswa, abode. Kum, your. Annaru maswakum, hell is your abode. Khalidina fiha, you will remain in it forever. Illa, except. Masha Allah, except if God wills. So you shall stay in it forever, except if God wills. Inna, indeed, Rabbaka, your Lord, Hakim, wise, Alim, knowledgeable. So indeed, your Lord is wise and knowledgeable. Wa and kazalika, in this way, nuwalli ba'd zalimina ba'dan. Nuwalli, we grasp ba'd zalimina, some of the wrongdoers, ba'za, with others, bima kanu yaksibun, because of their misdeeds. So we let kazalika nuvalli ba'da zalimina ba'da would mean we let the some of the wrongdoers grasp other wrongdoers. So in other words, God lets them fight with one another. Nuvalli would mean that we let them or give them the leverage ba'da zalimina ba'da, that they can fight with one another or get hold of one another. Bima kanu yaksibun, bima, because kanu did, yaksibun means what they earned, and of course what they earn are what their deeds. So deeds are referred to kasab. So because of the fact that what they have earned, we let them get hold of one another. So this completes our literal and idiomatic translation. We'll begin with verse 130 inshallah next week, and now you have time once again for your Q&A.
Shabana Ansari, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
डॉक्टर साहब ये हर्ज हमारा उर्दू का हर्ज और हरजन ये
No.
दूसरा अरबी का इसमें डिफरेंस है?
Yes, there is a difference. So haraj means, I mean, you can say that the word Urdu haraj has stemmed from the same Arabic, but in Arabic it actually means some hindrance, something that stops you from doing something. And that is precisely why when it comes into the Urdu language, it has this shade of meaning. But in Arabic, it is as if you say that something becomes impossible, something grips you, something squeezes you, something makes, it becomes makes your path difficult. Anything that causes difficulty is called haraj.
लयूहून जो है वो वाह्युन से है या ये अलग
Yes,
लफ्ज
yes,
है?
from wahi, from to awha,
वाह्युन
to inspire, to send a brainwave, to reveal.
Thank you, Dr. Saleem. I do not have any more questions pertaining to the passage. Can I open the forum for general questions?
Yes, please.
Okay, we have around about 15 minutes left. If anybody has any questions that they want to ask, please go ahead. Osama, please ask your question.
Sir, this word Khaliduna for the heaven and hell, Ustad Ghamidi has an opinion that hell will not be eternal. So, what's the reason for that?
You see, his view is based on verses which are from Surah Hud, and they say illa masha rabbuk. He does not say that it is not eternal. What he says is that it is not essential to think that it is eternal. And because the words in Surah Hud are that ma damat is samawatu wal ard, as long as the heavens and the earth sustain, as long as they are, except if God wills. So this exception tells us that if God wills, He can just destroy people totally, and they can just become obliterated. And some of them, maybe He just does not continue with that. Enough punishment is given to them, and then they are taken out from that from hell.
But he doesn't have the same opinion for the heaven. I think.
No, because heaven is a promise, is a place of reward. The words which are used in Surah Hud are very similar for heaven and are very similar for hell. But because of the fact that it's a place of pleasure and it's a place for that people will relish, so there's no reason to say that it's going to end.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Noshad, Shafqat Saab, please ask your question.
Yes, Dr. Just a follow up on what I asked earlier. What about the other living beings? For example, we tread on ants or we kill cockroaches deliberately. What does
You
what do
see,
we have to
animals
say on that?
which cause any nuisance or harm, we have the right to kill them. I mean, they could be ants which are maybe they bite you and they create some problem. Otherwise, there are other issues or other instances in which you're not trampling on ants deliberately. It just happens. For example, when you're walking on grass, you might be killing some animals or small insects which are living in the grass. Similarly, when you're walking on a road, so that is something that you're not doing intentionally. But what you do intentionally is, for example, you kill a lizard or you might kill some animal which is dangerous, and that is also fine. And then, of course, there are gray areas in which you just kill animals because you think that they are causing nuisance, like, of course, flies or mosquitoes, and they do cause nuisance and they also spread disease. So I think that it all depends what you are doing. But the law of qisas, or the law of taking the life, is mentioned in the Quran from two angles. One, when you kill a human being for any reason, and two, when you kill an animal which is meant for eating. So these are the only two instances which the Quran covers. Either you kill a human being for whatever reason, or you kill an animal, and the purpose of killing that animal is to consume its meat. The rest has not been covered by the Quran, and of course, it's left to our own common sense and practice. That obviously we would not kill animals which are harmless, and if we end up doing that, at best it can be regarded as a unbecoming act, and so on and so forth.
Thank you
Thank you,
very
Dr.
much.
Salim. I have a question too. What about killing animals when people do it for nazar and for sadqa? Is that does that fall in the same bracket, or do we?
You see,
Is
when you
that
kill, when you slaughter animals, when you make vows and offerings, the purpose is that you slaughter that animal and you distribute it to the poor people. So again, that is a purpose that is perfectly okay. You are killing an animal to consume its meat, and mostly it is done to distribute it towards people or amongst people who cannot afford them.
so? Basically, there is truth to that concept that that God will whatever is hindering us. So because people do it, uh, if they feel that there's something that's not going right in their life or whatever, so that is something they
Hmm.
can do and they must do.
I mean, that is
Also,
again a commonplace misconception. They think that if they are struck by a calamity, then maybe sacrificing a goat is something that's going to ward off that calamity. That's a common misconception. That does not happen the way we have been told. You see, what we have been told is that whenever we are struck with a calamity, maybe some things are going wrong financially, or maybe disease is coming, or it could be anything that we find that we are being stuck in. Then the way is to attach ourselves to God, to come closer to Him. This could be through the prayer, this could be through fasting, this could be through sacrificing an animal. So these are acts that we can do to come near the Almighty, or try to come near to Him. These are acts of worship, or these are acts of piety. So it's not like a prescribed thing that as soon as some calamity strikes you, you start slaughtering animals. It's not. It does not happen that way. As soon as a calamity strikes you, you try to come closer to God by maybe communicating with Him through the Quran, through a nafil prayer, or maybe slaughtering an animal. So these are things that can take you closer to God and hence win His pleasure. So they're not like a hotline that as soon as you do certain things, and God is going to ward off the calamity that has been struck upon you. That they have their own principle. God strikes you with calamities or with trials in order to test you, in order to bring the best person out of you, in order to make you realize maybe that at times you have committed some mistakes. So all these are other aspects of wisdom that we need to understand. It's not like a mechanical thing that here comes a calamity and there comes the animal to be slaughtered.
got it. Thank you, Dr. Saleem. So Ammar Rasool Saab has a question that he wants to ask. Ammar Saab,
course.
if you want to keep that question a little short, go ahead and ask your question. Thank you.
Ji, thank you, Dr. Saab. I wanted to ask this question regarding occult practices or powers of certain people and their satanic or polytheistic nature. And I wanted to ask a personal question. And sir, I would appreciate your guidance on the
Right.
matter. Recently, I was traveling abroad, and I met somebody who has never been to Pakistan, and he's not a Muslim. And him and I, we hit it off, and he became very close. And then, in our third conversation, he said to me that he is a medium of some sort, and he is able to talk to those who have passed away. And he said to me that there is this person that I am in touch with right now. He is somebody from your life who has died, and he has such and such alphabets in his name. And also, he divulged some information about my personal life that he could not have any way of knowing. Anyway, I was obviously drawn to him, and we became close. And so now, sir, I'm back, and I have been thinking about this constantly, and I'm also very afraid. Generally speaking, the way that I was brought up to think about such matters is that if such a person does exist, and even locally in Pakistan, in Lahore, I have heard that such people do exist who are able to have this information about you, about your personal life, about your love life. And it is usually believed that these people have mokkals, or they have jinns under their control, and through these jinns they are able to get this information about people. And so I had the same thought about this person. But I'm also afraid, what if the intentions of this person are not good? Maybe he is into black magic or other black arts. And obviously, all of these are subjects that I have very little knowledge of. I lead a very simple life. I need your guidance on what to do. Should I sever all contact? Should I speak to him about what I think is going on at his end? What should be my reaction to his approach towards me, that he wants to remain in touch, be a friend, find out more about my life? Thank you, sir.
So, a couple of things that might help you. First, we know from the Quran that as far as people who pass away, their souls, they are consigned to the land of Barzakh. And the Quran actually says that Barzakh is like a barrier. The literal meaning of the word Barzakh in Arabic is barrier, something which is like a curtain which stops someone from crossing over. So the Quran has made it clear that once the spirits or the souls of people are taken away, they are consigned to the land of Barzakh, and they cannot cross back in this world. So the first thing that we can say with certainty on the authority of the Quran is that whatever he's talking to, or whichever thing that you're talking to, there cannot be the people that have lived before us or who have passed away, because regarding them, the Quran has made it clear that their spirits or their souls cannot come back in this life. And this is a very common misconception that people have, that they think that at times if they go to their graves or if they call them out, then they might be near them. There are many people who give us this impression. They say that I find my mother's soul roaming around in my house and I feel very close to her. And a number of things, a number of impressions like this you might have heard. So all these are basically psychological, I would say, happenings that people get. But regarding mediums or regarding people who claim themselves to be mediums, well, one thing that has to be absolutely clear is that they cannot be the souls of the dead. But yes, there could be other forms of beings that we cannot see. And we know that the jinn, of course, are one of those category, or one of that category of beings that do have their existence. The Quran talks about them, and it also tells us that they cannot. I mean, we cannot see them, but they can see us. So, in all probability, he would be talking to some jinn, maybe, or a jinni, either of the two. And what exactly do they do, and how exactly they get hold of them, and how can they become their subservient? We know that from the Quran that Prophet Solomon had been given this authority from God, that he could control these miscreant jinns. And in fact, the temple that he built, Solomon's temple, was built through these jinn. Many of them were employed for work. So this is one instance that we know from the Quran, that Prophet of God was given authority on the jinn to so that he could use them for some purpose. We know that the Quran says, "Bannaun wa ghawas." Not only would they build animals, but they would also buildings, but they would also dive deep down and bring forth treasures of the sea. So this is something that we know regarding a prophet of God. But how much these people know and what exactly they do with these spirits, if we want to call them spirits, of course, not referring to human spirits, but referring to these the jinn and the jinnis. I cannot say with certainty, because you see, this is the topic which has not been covered in the Quran. It's, as you yourself has said, it's an occult science, and occult science is a science that cannot be taught in a university, or it cannot be instructed in a classroom. It is something that passes on from one person to another as a personal knowledge, and I mean, it goes on and on. So all that we can say with reasonable certainty is that in the time of Solomon, if you recall from the Quran also, there was a lot of sorcery and wizardry and witchcraft going on. So the Almighty, in order to counter wizardry and witchcraft, he sent down two of his angels, Harut and Marut, which are mentioned in the Quran, and they were given a certain discipline of knowledge, and they would teach these people this discipline, and they would say that this sorcery and this wizardry that is going on today, and people are bothering you, this is a knowledge that we have been given by God, and you can counter and you can sort of defeat this wizardry through this knowledge. And they would say, innama nahnu fitnatun fala takfur, but this knowledge that we are giving you is like a double-edged sword. It can kill other people and it can kill yourself as well, because such is the nature. So you have to use it wisely. And people would normally use it to cause a bifurcation between a husband and wife, and they would do it in a negative way. So these angels warned them. So what we can say is that many of these, many of the people who claim that they have this knowledge of the with the spirits, maybe, or they can talk to them, or they have people who are such beings who are subservient to them, it is perhaps the remnants of that knowledge which was revealed to Harut and Marut, and it was passed down from one person to another, and a lot of nonsense was mixed up in it. There was some truth to it, but a lot of falsehood as well was mixed up with it. And today, people who are called mediums or wizards, or people who belong to this category, so they have that remnant of that knowledge that was given to Harut and Marut, but not in its pure, unadulterated form. We have it mixed up with so many other things. So we have black magic, we have voodoo, we have witchcraft. So all these things, they are from the dark side of the world. They are from Satan, as we know, and about them we just cannot have any certain knowledge. So all that we can say reasonably, that yes, there is some knowledge that exists, and it could be the remnants of the knowledge that was given to people in the times of Solomon by Harut and Marut, and in some form it has come down even today to many nations of the world. But what exactly it is and how exactly does it work, personally, I cannot say with certainty, because the more you know about it, the more you know that you know nothing about it. It's a lot of conjecture and speculation. The second part of your question is what to do with such a person, and I think that what you should do with such a person is that don't break off relations with any person. That's not the right thing to do. All that you can be is that all you can do is be on guard, and instead of letting out information of your life, it is better that you talk to him and tell him that I would like to base my knowledge on certainty, and that certainty is something that God provides me through His book. And through His book, we know that as far as our fate is concerned, it hinges on the knowledge of Wahi or revelation, which is in the Quran. Any other knowledge that you give or speak of is something that is more speculation or conjecture, and hence I have been advised by God, or commanded by God rather, to follow what is certain, and what is certain is something from God. And I would not like to do something which is based on conjecture or speculation, or is a mixture of right and wrong, and I cannot be certain about that. So I would like to be a friend of yours regarding so many other things in the world, but in this particular area, which is your expertise, I would like to excuse myself to be a part of any knowledge that you would like to give or maybe teach. So I think something like that.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dr. Saleem.
Thank you.
I hope it answers your question, Amar. Okay, so Osama, we'll ask your question next time. And thank you so much, Dr. Saleem. And inshallah, we'll be reconnecting next Saturday. Thank you so much.